A transport ship landed with a soft hum on the green grass of Terra University. 5 alien students stepped out, each one very different from the others. They had studied human behavior for months, but seeing Earth for the first time still felt strange. Zeftak was the first to walk down the ramp. He was tall and covered in dark green scales. His yellow eyes looked around carefully, taking notes on a small device. Everything had to be perfect and organized in his world. He expected the same from humans. Behind him came Villanara, who looked like she was made of living crystal. Light passed through her body, making rainbow colors dance around her. She spoke by making musical sounds that her translator changed into words. Her people valued harmony and peace above all else. Grok stomped down next. He was huge and made of what looked like gray rock. Each step shook the ground a little. On his home world, everything was heavy and slow. He thought humans would be the same way. Pip buzzed around the others, moving so fast she was hard to see. She was no bigger than a human child, with 4 arms and big bug eyes. Her people did everything quickly and exactly right. She had lists. For everything. Last came Nox, floating in a metal suit that held his gas-like body. Blue energy swirled inside the clear parts of his suit. His people were very smart and logical. They made decisions based on facts, not feelings. "Welcome to Terra University," called a voice. A human man walked toward them with a big smile. He had messy brown hair and wore casual clothes. This was Jake Morrison, their guide. The aliens stopped and stared. According to their files, humans were supposed to be formal and serious during first meetings. But Jake looked relaxed and happy. "Hey guys, welcome to the madhouse," Jake said, still smiling. Zeftak's scales changed color slightly. He was confused. "Madhouse?" he asked. "Are we going to a medical facility for the mentally ill?" Jake laughed. No, it's just a saying. The university gets pretty crazy sometimes. Lots of students, lots of energy, you know." The aliens did not know. They looked at each other with worry. Grok spoke in his deep, slow voice. "Crazy is bad. Crazy means disorder." "Not always," Jake said. "Sometimes a little chaos keeps things interesting. Come on, let me show you around." As they walked across the campus, the aliens saw things that made no sense to them. Human students were sitting on the grass, eating food and talking loudly. Some were throwing around objects back and forth for no clear reason. Others were reading books while music played in their ears. "Why are they not in designated eating areas?" Pip asked, buzzing nervously around Jake's head. "They can eat wherever they want," Jake explained, "as long as they clean up after themselves." Velinara's crystal body chimed with confusion. "But there must be rules about proper eating locations." "Sure, there are some rules," Jake said. "No food in the library, no messy stuff in the classrooms. But mostly, we trust people to use common sense." The aliens did not understand this common sense concept. In their worlds, there were clear rules for everything. You followed the rules, and everything worked perfectly. They passed a group of human students sitting in a circle on the grass. The students were talking and laughing about something. One student was telling a story with big hand movements. The others were listening and making comments. "What is the purpose of this gathering?" Knox asked through his suit speaker. "They're just hanging out," Jake said. "Probably between classes. Humans are social creatures. We like to talk to each other." "But they are not accomplishing any task," Zeftak observed. "They are wasting time." Jake stopped walking and looked at the alien students. "You know what? Maybe we should start with the basics. What did your teachers tell you about humans?" The aliens shared what they had learned. Humans were supposed to be organized, efficient, and logical. They followed clear social rules, and worked hard to complete tasks. They were serious about education and respected authority. Jake nodded slowly. Well, that's all true sometimes. But humans are also flexible. We adapt to situations. We change our plans when we need to. And we believe that taking time to build friendships makes us stronger as a group. A human student ran past them, chasing after a paper that was blowing in the wind. She caught it and walked back, breathing hard but smiling. Thanks, wind, she said to the air. Really needed that exercise today. The alien stared as she walked away. Pip's forearms twitched with confusion. She thanked the wind. The wind cannot hear her. The wind is not alive. She was being funny, Jake explained. Humans use something called sarcasm. We say things we don't really mean, but in a way that makes people laugh. But that is inefficient communication, Knox said. Why not say exactly what you mean? Because sometimes it's not about being efficient, Jake said. Sometimes it's about connecting with other people, making them feel good, sharing a moment of happiness. The aliens walked in silence for a while, thinking about this. Their worlds were very different. Everything had a purpose. Everything followed rules. There was no time for sharing moments of happiness. They reached the dormitory where they would be staying. Jake showed them their rooms and explained the basic rules. No loud noise after 10 at night. Keep common areas clean. Respect other students' privacy. These are reasonable rules, Zeftak said, looking relieved. Oh, and one more thing, Jake added. The students here are really friendly. They'll probably want to talk to you, ask questions about your worlds, maybe invite you to do things with them. Don't feel like you have to say yes, but don't be surprised if they ask. After Jake left, the 5 aliens gathered in the common room. They sat in a circle, just like the human students had been doing outside, though they did not realize it. The human coordinator is not what we expected, Velinara chimed softly. Nothing here is what we expected, Grok rumbled. The humans seem ... chaotic. Not chaotic, Zeftak corrected. Inefficient. They waste time on activities that serve no clear purpose. And they communicate in ways that do not make sense, Knox added. This sarcasm serves no logical function. Pip buzzed in agreement. My people would never accept such disorganization. Every moment must have a purpose. The aliens spent the rest of the evening writing reports to send to their home worlds. They documented everything they had seen. Humans eating in inappropriate locations, wasting time on social activities, and using inefficient communication methods. But as they wrote, each alien had a small, uncomfortable thought. The human students had looked happy. Really happy. Not the quiet satisfaction of completing a task correctly, but something brighter and more energetic. The aliens had been happy too, in their own ways. But it was a different kind of happiness. Calmer, more controlled as they prepared for sleep. They wondered what tomorrow would bring. Their first day of classes with human students. They expected it to be educational, but they also expected it to be strange. They had no idea just how strange it would be. The next morning, the alien students walked to their first class together. They had studied the schedule carefully and arrived exactly on time. The classroom was already full of human students, but something was wrong. The humans were not sitting quietly in neat rows. They were turned around in their chairs, talking to each other. Some were laughing. Others were showing pictures on their small devices. One student was even eating what looked like a sweet pastry. Should we report this disorder to the instructor? Zeftak whispered to the others. Before anyone could answer, a human woman walked into the room. This was Lisa Barnes, their biology professor. She was carrying a large bag and looked tired but happy. Good morning, everyone, she called out cheerfully. Sorry I'm a few minutes late. My car decided it didn't want to start this morning. The human students laughed and made sympathetic sounds. Some called out suggestions about car problems. Lisa smiled and nodded. "Thanks for all the advice," she said. "I'll try the thing with the battery cables, Danny." The alien students were shocked. The teacher was late and the students were giving her advice? This was not how education worked in their worlds. Lisa noticed the 5 aliens sitting in the front row. "And you must be our exchange students. Welcome to Biology 101. I'm Professor Barnes, but everyone just calls me Lisa." Pip's translator crackled with confusion. "Just calls you Lisa? But you are the authority figure. You should be addressed with proper titles." "You can call me Professor Barnes if you prefer," Lisa said kindly. "But I don't mind, Lisa. We're all here to learn together." The aliens looked at each other. Learning together? Teachers taught and students learned. That was how it worked. Lisa started the class by asking a question. "Who can tell me what they know about evolution?" Several human students raised their hands. Lisa pointed to one, a young man named Danny Walsh. "Evolution is how species change over time," Danny said. "Natural selection favors traits that help organisms survive and reproduce." "Excellent," Lisa said. "That's the basic idea. Now, evolution happens because ... Wait, Danny interrupted. "I have a question about that." The aliens froze. A student had just interrupted the teacher. This was incredibly rude in their cultures. They waited for Lisa to punish Danny. Instead, Lisa smiled. "What's your question, Danny?" "If evolution is about survival," Danny said, "why do some animals have traits that seem to make survival harder? Like peacocks with those huge tails that make them easy targets for predators?" The aliens were horrified. Danny was challenging. The teacher's explanation. This was not how learning worked. But Lisa looked excited. "That's a fantastic question," she said. "Who wants to take a guess at the answer?" More hands went up. The students started discussing sexual selection and how some traits helped with mating, even if they made survival harder. Lisa guided the discussion, asking more questions and encouraging the students to think deeper. Zeftak was taking notes frantically. The humans were not following any proper learning protocol. They were questioning everything, even the teachers. Statements. In the middle of the discussion, a human student named Amy Foster was trying to set up some equipment for a demonstration. She was connecting tubes and wires, but something went wrong. There was a small pop and sparks flew from the device. "Oops," Amy said, laughing. "My bad. I think I connected the wrong wires." The aliens stared in shock. Amy had just destroyed valuable equipment, and she was laughing about it. She should be ashamed. She should be punished. But Lisa just walked over to help. "No worries, Amy. These things happen. Let's figure out what went wrong so we can fix it." Together, Lisa and Amy examined the broken equipment. Other students gathered around to help. They treated the mistake as a learning opportunity, not a failure. "This is madness," Knox whispered to the others. "In my world, destroying equipment would result in severe consequences." "In my world, too," Grok rumbled quietly. "Resources are precious. Waste is not tolerated." But the humans seemed to think differently. They were already fixing the equipment and explaining to Amy what had gone wrong. By the end of class, everything was working again. After biology class, the aliens went to their physics class. They hoped it would be more organized and formal. It was not. The physics teacher, Professor Martinez, started the class by having the students work in groups. Each group got a different problem to solve. They had to figure out the answer together and then explain it to the rest of the class. The aliens were put in different groups with human students. This was their first close contact with humans their own age. Zeftak was partnered with a human named Kevin Wright. Kevin was friendly and talkative, which made Zeftak uncomfortable. In the middle of working on their physics problem, Kevin pulled out a wrapped sandwich. Want half? Kevin asked, offering part of his lunch to Zeftak. Zeftak stared at the sandwich. I do not understand. Are you trying to sell me food? No, it's free, Kevin said. I packed extra. My mom always makes me too much food. But why would you give me food for nothing? Zeftak asked. What do you want in return? Kevin looked confused. I don't want anything. I'm just being friendly. You're new here, right? I thought you might be hungry. This made no sense to Zeftak. In his world, food was shared only with family members, or as part of formal trade agreements. Giving food to strangers was not logical. Meanwhile, Velinara was working with a human girl named Sarah Mitchell. Sarah was very animated, using her hands to explain concepts and making funny faces when she got confused. Her emotional expressions were very strong. This problem is so frustrating, Sarah said, making an exaggerated, angry face. I feel like my brain is going to explode. Velinara's crystal body shimmered with alarm. Are you in medical distress? Should I call for help? Sarah laughed. No. I'm fine. It's just an expression. I mean, the problem is really hard, and it's making me feel frustrated. But you are. Laughing, Velinara observed. If you are frustrated, why are you expressing joy? Because frustration is part of learning, Sarah explained. When something is hard, it means you're growing. And sometimes you just have to laugh about it, or you'll go crazy. There was that word again. Crazy. The humans seemed to think crazy was not always bad. In another group, Grok was working with a small human named Tony Kim. Tony was trying to explain how to use a lever to lift heavy objects. Grok was puzzled because Tony was much smaller and weaker than him, but Tony seemed to understand physics better. You see, Tony said, it's not about being strong. It's about using the right tools and understanding how forces work. Grok had always solved problems with strength. If something was too heavy, you became stronger. If something was too hard, you pushed harder. But Tony was showing him that there were other ways to solve problems. Pip was partnered with a human named Rachel Davis. Rachel worked very differently from Pip. Where Pip made detailed lists and followed them exactly, Rachel seemed to jump around between ideas randomly. So if we do this, Rachel said, drawing on her paper, and then maybe try this approach. Oh, wait, that won't work. Let me try something else. Pip's forearms twitched with anxiety. But you have not completed the first approach. You should finish each step before moving to the next. Sometimes you have to try different things to see what works, Rachel said. If I get stuck on one approach, I try another. Eventually, I figure it out. This seemed very inefficient to Pip, but somehow Rachel was making progress on the problem. When physics class ended, the aliens gathered in the hallway. They were all looking confused and worried. The humans do not follow proper learning protocols, Zeftak said. They question their teachers and challenge explanations. They share resources without expecting payment, Grok added. This makes no economic sense. They express emotions that do not match their situations, Velinara chimed. They laugh when they should be serious. They abandon organized approaches for random experimentation. Pip buzzed anxiously. How do they accomplish anything? Most disturbing, Knox said, is that their methods seem to work. They are learning, despite their disorganized approach. The aliens walked to their next class in silence. They had expected human education to be formal and structured. Instead, they found chaos, emotion, and behavior that seemed to make no logical sense, but they had also seen something else. The human students seemed engaged and excited about learning. They asked questions not because they had to, but because they wanted to understand. They worked together naturally, sharing knowledge and resources. In the aliens' worlds, learning was serious business. You memorized facts, and followed procedures. You did not question authorities or waste time on social interaction. But the humans were learning too. Maybe even learning better than the aliens had expected. As they walked to their next class, each alien student had the same uncomfortable thought. What if the humans were not as disorganized as they appeared? What if there was a method to their madness? They decided to observe more carefully. There had to be an explanation for human behavior. There had to be some logic behind the chaos. They just had to figure out what it was. The third day started like the others, but everything changed when the storm hit. The alien students were in the library with their human classmates, working on a group project about interplanetary communication. Outside, dark clouds were building, but no one seemed worried. Humans, the aliens had learned, were not very good at following weather warnings. Zeftak was carefully organizing research notes when the first wind hit the building. The lights flickered, and rain began hitting the windows hard. Within minutes, the storm became violent. "Attention all students and staff," came a voice over the speakers. "This is an emergency. A severe storm has damaged the main research building. All students should remain in their current locations and wait for further instructions." The alien students looked at each other. This was a clear directive. They should stay put and wait for official rescue teams to handle the situation. That was how emergencies were managed in their worlds. But the humans were not staying put. "The research building?" said Kevin Wright, the human who had shared his sandwich with Zeftak. "That's where Professor Johnson keeps all his climate data. 20 years of research. And Professor Martinez has her physics experiments there," added Sarah Michel. "She's been working on them for months." The humans started talking rapidly, sharing information about what was stored in the research building. They seemed genuinely worried, not about their own safety, but about the work that might be lost. Then something happened that shocked the aliens. Without any official orders, without waiting for permission, the humans began organizing themselves. "We need to form teams," said Danny Walsh, the student who had questioned the teacher about evolution. "Some people to evacuate equipment, others to help with data backup, and a coordination team to keep everyone safe." But we were instructed to remain here, Zeftak said. "We should wait for proper authorities to handle this situation." The humans looked at him with surprise. "The proper authorities are probably busy with bigger emergencies right now," said Amy Foster, the girl who had broken the equipment earlier. "We can't just sit here while important research gets destroyed." "But you are not trained for emergency response," Knox pointed out. "You could make the situation worse." "Maybe," said Rachel Davis. "But doing nothing will definitely make it worse. Come on, let's go help." The aliens watched in amazement as the human students divided into groups without any formal leadership structure. No one was giving orders, but everyone seemed to know what to do. Jake Morrison, their coordinator, appeared in the library doorway. His usual casual demeanor was gone. He looked serious and focused. "I need volunteers," he said. "The research building is partially flooded and the power is out. We need to save what we can before the damage gets worse." Almost every human student raised their hand. The aliens were stunned. These students were volunteering to go into danger to save other people's work. "What about our safety?" asked Velinara. "Should we not wait for professional rescue teams?" "We'll be as safe as possible," Jake said. "But the rescue teams are dealing with people who are trapped or injured. We're the only ones who can save the research right now." The aliens found themselves being swept along with the humans. Despite their logical objections, they could not just sit in the library while everyone else was helping. The scene outside was chaotic. Rain was pouring down, and wind was blowing debris around the campus. The research building had several broken windows and water was flowing out of the ground floor. But the humans were not acting chaotic. They were working together with remarkable efficiency. Mike Chun, A student the aliens had not met before was standing near the building entrance with a clipboard. He was somehow managing to keep track of who was going in and out of the dangerous building. "Teams of 3, he called out. "No one goes in alone. 15-minute shifts maximum. Focus on the most important stuff first." The aliens watched as humans formed teams naturally. People who had never worked together before were coordinating like they had been partners for years. Steve Martinez, another student, had set up a food distribution station. He was handing out sandwiches and hot drinks to people who were working in the rain. "Where did this food come from?" asked Grok. "Did the university provide it?" "Nah," Steve said with a grin. "Students are bringing stuff from their dorms." Sarah brought her entire snack stash. Kevin cleaned out his mini fridge. "We're all sharing." The aliens were amazed. During an emergency, these humans were giving away their personal food supplies to help others. This was not logical behavior, according to any economic model they knew. Inside the research building, the humans were working with impressive organization. They had figured out which research was most important and were prioritizing accordingly. They were also being creative about solutions. When they found that the elevators were not working, Tony Kim suggested using the building's laundry chutes to lower equipment safely to the ground floor. When they discovered that some computers were still running on emergency power, Amy Foster organized a relay system to copy important data to portable drives. The aliens tried to help, but they found themselves slowing down the humans' efforts. They kept asking for official procedures and clear chains of command. The humans were frustrated by these delays. "Look," said Danny Walsh to Zeftek, "I know you want to do this the right way, but sometimes the right way is whatever works. Don't have time for proper procedures." "But without procedures, how do you prevent mistakes?" Zeftek asked. "We don't," Danny admitted. "We'll probably make some mistakes. But making mistakes while trying to help is better than doing nothing while things get destroyed." This was a completely alien concept to Zeftek. In his world, avoiding mistakes was more important than taking action. As the rescue effort continued, the aliens observed things that confused them even more. The humans were not just working efficiently, they were also taking care of each other's emotional needs. When Rachel Davis came out of the building crying because she had not been able to save a professor's research, several humans immediately gathered around her. They offered comfort and reassurance. Someone brought her a hot drink. Someone else found her a dry jacket. "She is expressing sadness about failing to complete a task," Pip observed. "Why are the others not telling her to control her emotions and focus on the mission?" "Because emotions are part of being human," Sarah Mitchell explained. "Rachel feels bad because she cares about the professor's work. That caring is what made her try so hard to save it. We don't want her to stop caring." This was very strange to the aliens. In their worlds, emotions were private things that you controlled yourself. You did not burden others with your feelings, but the humans seemed to think that sharing emotions made the group stronger. When Rachel felt better, she went back to work with renewed energy. The comfort from her classmates had actually improved. Her performance. As the night continued, the aliens noticed something else remarkable. The humans were taking turns resting, making sure everyone got some sleep. They were sharing resources and rotating responsibilities. No one was trying to be a hero or work longer than was safe. How did they coordinate this without official leadership? Knox asked Jake during a break. Jake thought for a moment. "I guess we've just learned to work together." When you're in a situation like this, you don't have time to argue about who's in charge. You just do what needs to be done. "But what if people disagree about what needs to be done?" Velinara asked. "Then we talk about it quickly and make a decision," Jake said. "Sometimes we choose wrong, but we learn from it and do better next time." The aliens were beginning to see patterns in the human behavior. The humans were not following pre-planned procedures, but they were following principles. They prioritized helping others over following rules. They valued quick action over perfect planning. They trusted each other to make good decisions. When morning came, the storm had passed, and the immediate crisis was over. The humans had saved most of the important research. More importantly, no one had been seriously hurt. The aliens watched as the humans cleaned up and restored normal operations. They worked together to repair damage and organize the saved materials. They shared breakfast and told stories about a night's adventures. It was like a big team-building exercise, Amy Foster said, laughing. Except with actual danger and important stuff to save. The other humans laughed too. They were treating the emergency as a positive experience, something that had brought them closer together. The aliens did not understand how a crisis could be positive, but they could see that the humans were energized and happy. They had faced danger together and succeeded. As they walked back to their dormitory, the aliens were quiet. They had a lot to think about. The humans' response was highly effective. Zeftak admitted reluctantly. They saved more research than any official rescue team could have. They also maintained group morale under stressful conditions, Valinara added. Their emotional support systems actually improved performance. And they did all of this without formal leadership or detailed procedures, Knox observed. Somehow, they organized themselves. The aliens were beginning to suspect that human behavior, while strange, might not be as random as they had thought. Maybe there was a logic to the madness after all, but if that was true, they would need to completely rethink everything. After the storm, everything changed for the alien students. They could no longer dismiss human behavior as simple chaos. They had seen the humans work together under pressure, and it had been impressive. But they still did not understand how it worked. The next few days were different. The aliens found themselves looking at human behavior with new eyes. They started to notice patterns they had missed before. In biology class, when Danny Walsh challenged Professor Lisa's explanations, the aliens now saw that he was not being disrespectful. He was trying to understand the topic better. His questions made the whole class think more deeply about the subject. His questioning improves the learning process for everyone, Zeftak wrote in his notes. It is not disruption. It is enhancement. During lunch, when Kevin Wright shared his food with other students, the aliens began to understand that this was not about economics. It was about building relationships. Students who shared food with Kevin were more likely to help him with his studies later. The food sharing created a network of mutual support. It is not inefficient, Grok rumbled to the others. It is investment in social bonds. The aliens started participating more in human activities. They wanted to understand how this strange social system worked. Valinara joined a study group with Sarah Mitchell and several other human students. At first, she was confused by how the humans approached studying. They would spend time talking about topics that seemed unrelated to their coursework. They would make jokes and tell stories. They would take breaks to get snacks or listen to music. This is not efficient study behavior, Valinara had told Sarah during their first session. Maybe not, Sarah had replied, but it's more fun. And when studying is fun, we remember things better. Valinara had thought this was nonsense. But over the following days, she noticed that she was indeed remembering the material better. The jokes and stories created emotional connections to the information. The relaxed atmosphere made her brain work more effectively. Human emotions enhance learning, she wrote in her report. They do not interfere with it. Pip started working with Rachel Davis on a computer programming project. Pip was frustrated by Rachel's approach to coding. Rachel would write some code, test it, find problems, and then try a completely different approach. She would repeat this process many times. Why do you not plan the entire program before you begin? Pip asked. You are wasting time with all these failed attempts. But the failed attempts teach me things, Rachel explained. Each time I try something and it doesn't work, I learn something new about the problem. By the end, I understand the problem much better than if I had just followed a plan. Pip was skeptical, but she started paying attention to Rachel's results. Rachel's final programs were often more creative and effective than programs written by following standard procedures. The trial and error process led to innovative solutions. Human willingness to fail leads to better final results, Pip wrote. Failure is not waste. It is learning. Knox was partnered with Tony Kim for a physics experiment. Knox was amazed by Tony's approach to problem solving. When they encountered a problem with their equipment, Tony did not consult manuals or contact authorities. He just started experimenting. What if we try this? Tony would say, making a small adjustment. Or maybe this will work better. Knox expected this random experimentation to fail badly, but Tony seemed to have an intuitive understanding of how systems worked. His experiments were not truly random. They were educated guesses based on his understanding of physical principles. How do you know what to try? Knox asked. I don't always know, Tony admitted, but I have a feeling about what might work. And if it doesn't work, I try something else. Eventually, I figure it out. This feeling concept was very alien to Knox. His people made decisions based on logical analysis, not feelings. But Tony's feelings seemed to be based on unconscious pattern recognition. His brain was processing information in ways that Tony himself did not fully understand. Human intuition is a form of rapid information processing, Knox wrote. It appears random, but is actually based on complex pattern recognition. Grok was having his own revelations. He had been working with Mike Chun on a construction project for the campus. Grok expected to be the most useful team member because of his great strength. But Mike showed him that intelligence and creativity were often more valuable than raw power. When they needed to move a heavy piece of equipment through a narrow doorway, Grok's first instinct was to force it through. But Mike suggested disassembling the equipment first. This took more time initially, but it prevented damage and made the job much easier. Humans use intelligence to multiply their physical capabilities, Grok wrote. They do not just work harder, they work smarter. The aliens also began to understand human social dynamics better. They noticed that humans had complex networks of relationships. These relationships were not just about personal friendship. They were about creating a community that could handle problems together. When a student named Lisa Thompson got sick and missed several days of class, her classmates automatically started helping her. They shared notes, explained assignments, and even brought her food. This was not because they were required to help. It was because they knew that if they ever needed help, the community would support them too. Human communities are resilient because individuals support each other, Zeftak observed. This mutual support system makes the group stronger than the sum of its parts. The aliens began to see that human behavior that seemed chaotic was actually a complex adaptive system. Humans were constantly sharing information, resources, and emotional support. They were building networks of trust and cooperation. They were creating redundant systems so that if one part failed, others could take over. When Amy Foster broke equipment in class, other students immediately helped her fix it. This was not just kindness, it was a practical system. If people were afraid to make mistakes, they would not experiment. If they did not experiment, they would not learn or innovate. Human tolerance for failure encouraged innovation, Amy had explained to Pip. If I'm not afraid to break things, I'm more likely to try new approaches. And sometimes those new approaches lead to breakthroughs. The aliens realized that human society was designed to be antifragile. It got stronger when faced with challenges. The storm had been a perfect example. Instead of being weakened by the crisis, the human community had become more unified and effective. Human chaos is not disorder, Velinara said during one of their evening discussions. It is adaptive flexibility. Their emotional responses are not weaknesses, Knox added. They are information processing systems that help with decision-making. Their questioning of authority is not rebellion, Zeftak said. It is quality control that prevents bad decisions from being implemented. Their willingness to fail is not carelessness, Pip said. It is a learning strategy that leads to innovation. Their sharing of resources is not waste, Grok concluded. It is investment in community resilience. The aliens were beginning to understand that humans had evolved in a very different environment from their own species. Where the alien worlds were stable and predictable, Earth was chaotic and dangerous. Humans had developed strategies for dealing with uncertainty and change. But there was one more thing the aliens needed to understand. They had figured out how human behavior worked, but they still did not understand why it worked so well. The answer came during a group project in their sociology class. The humans were working on a presentation about different species' social structures. The aliens were supposed to contribute information about their own worlds as they worked together. The aliens noticed something important. The humans were not just cooperating with each other. They were also trying to understand and include the alien perspectives. Even though the aliens were different and sometimes difficult to work with, the humans kept trying to find ways to make them part of the team. Why do you keep trying to include us? Zeftak asked Danny Walsh during a break. We slow down your work with our questions and different approaches. Danny thought for a moment. Because different perspectives make the final result better, he said. You guys see things we miss. You ask questions we wouldn't think of. Sure, it takes longer, but the end product is stronger. This was the key insight the aliens had been missing. Humans did not just tolerate diversity. They actively sought it out because they understood that diversity made the group more effective. Human communities are stronger because they include different types of people, Velinar realized. They do not try to make everyone the same. They try to use everyone's different strengths. The aliens began to see that this was why human behavior seemed so chaotic. Humans were not following a single rigid system. They were constantly adapting and incorporating new ideas. They were building societies that could benefit from any type of contribution. When the storm had hit, the humans had not just used their standard emergency procedures. They had also used Tony's creative problem-solving, Amy's willingness to take risks, Sarah's emotional intelligence, and Kevin's natural leadership abilities. Every person had contributed something different, and the combination had been more effective than any single approach. We have been thinking about this wrong, Knox said to the others. We thought human behavioral. The day came for the alien students to return to their home worlds. They had spent 3 months at Terra University, and now they had to present their findings to the Galactic Educational Institute. The 5 aliens sat in the transport ship, each preparing their final reports. These reports would be studied by leaders and scientists across the galaxy. What they said could change how other species viewed humans. Are you ready for this? Jake Morrison asked as he came to see them off. Your teachers are going to be pretty surprised by what you've learned. That is an understatement, Zeftak replied. Our findings contradict everything we were taught about effective social organization. Jake smiled. Well, humans have always been good at contradicting expectations. Good luck with your presentations. The aliens waved goodbye as the ship lifted off. Earth got smaller below them, but the lessons they had learned would stay with them forever. 2 weeks later, the aliens stood before the Galactic Educational Institute's review board. The board consisted of the most respected educators and scientists from across the galaxy. They had come to hear about human behavior and to decide whether the exchange program should continue. The board members looked skeptical. Early reports from the aliens had described human behavior as chaotic and inefficient. Many board members had already decided that humans were not suitable for advanced education programs. "We will hear from each student individually," announced the board chairperson, a tall, thin being with multiple eyes. "Please present your findings about human educational and social systems." Zeftak went first. He stood at the presentation platform, his scales shifting color slightly with nervousness. "Honored board members," he began, "my initial observations of human behavior suggested serious dysfunction in their educational systems. Students regularly challenge their teachers, waste time on social activities, and follow no clear hierarchical structure." The board members nodded. This matched their expectations. However, Zeftak continued, extended observation revealed that these behaviors serve important functions. Human students challenge their teachers not from disrespect, but to deepen understanding. This questioning process leads to better learning outcomes for all students. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. This was not what they had expected to hear. Furthermore, Zeftak said, human social activities create networks of mutual support that enhance both individual and group performance. What appears to be wasted time is actually investment in community resilience. He went on to describe the storm incident, explaining how humans had self-organized to save important research without waiting for official authorization. He showed data comparing the effectiveness of human responses to similar crises on other worlds. Human social systems are not chaotic, he concluded. They are adaptively complex. They change based on situational requirements, making them highly effective in unpredictable environments. The board was silent for a long moment. Then the chairperson spoke. "These are unexpected findings. Student Velinara, please present your observations." Velinara floated to the platform, her crystal body shimmering with harmonic frequencies. "My people value emotional harmony above all else," she began. "We suppress disruptive emotions to maintain social stability. I expected human emotional expression to interfere with their cognitive and social functioning." She paused, letting her words resonate through the chamber. "I was wrong," she continued. "Human emotions are not disruptive. They are information processing systems that enhance decision-making. Students who express frustration about difficult problems are more motivated to find solutions. Students who share excitement about discoveries inspire others to learn more." Velinara described how human emotional bonds created stronger learning communities. She explained how emotional support during the crisis had actually improved performance, rather than hindering it. "Human emotions are not weaknesses to be controlled," she concluded. "They are strengths to be utilized. Their emotional intelligence allows them to build more effective social systems than purely logical approaches." The board members were murmuring among themselves now. These findings were challenging fundamental assumptions about rational behavior. Grok stepped forward next, his massive form making the platform shake slightly. "I come from a world where physical strength determines social status," he rumbled. "I assumed humans, being physically weak, would have ineffective social hierarchies." He paused, letting his voice echo through the chamber. "But humans do not rely on physical strength alone. They use intelligence, creativity, and cooperation to multiply their capabilities. A small human solved problems that my strength could not address. Their hierarchies are based on competence and contribution, not just physical dominance." Grok described how humans had moved heavy equipment during the crisis using tools and teamwork rather than brute force. He explained how their collaborative approach often produced better results than individual effort. "Human society is strong because it uses everyone's abilities," he concluded. "They do not waste potential by focusing only on physical power. They create strength through cooperation. Pip buzzed forward eagerly, her forearms moving rapidly as she organized her notes. "My species values efficiency and precision above all else," she said in her rapid, high-pitched voice. "We follow detailed procedures and minimize waste. Human behavior appeared extremely inefficient to me." She displayed charts and graphs showing human work patterns compared to those of her own species. "But human inefficiency includes beneficial redundancies," she continued. "When they make mistakes, they learn from them and develop better solutions. When they experiment with different approaches, they discover innovations that procedure following cannot achieve." Pip explained how human willingness to fail had led to creative solutions during the crisis. She showed how their trial and error approach, while slower initially, often produced superior final results. "Human inefficiency is actually adaptive flexibility," she concluded. "It allows them to handle unexpected situations that would paralyze more rigid systems." Finally, Knox floated forward, his energy form swirling within his containment suit. "My people make decisions based purely on logical analysis," he said through his suit's speakers. "We consider emotional or intuitive decision-making to be primitive and unreliable." He projected data showing human decision-making patterns during various situations. "However, human intuition is not primitive," he continued. "It is a form of rapid pattern recognition that processes information too complex for conscious analysis. Their gut feelings are actually sophisticated information processing that allows them to make effective decisions quickly." Knox described how human intuition had guided effective responses during the crisis. He explained how their combination of logical analysis and intuitive judgment produced better outcomes than either approach alone. "Human decision-making is not illogical," he concluded. "It is multimodal. They use both conscious reasoning and unconscious pattern recognition to solve problems. This gives them capabilities that purely logical systems cannot match." When all 5 aliens had finished their presentations, the board sat in stunned silence. Everything they thought they knew about effective civilization had been challenged. The chairperson finally spoke. "These findings are revolutionary. You are telling us that behaviors we consider dysfunctional are actually advanced adaptive strategies?" "That is correct," Seftak replied. "Human behavior appears chaotic only when measured against standards designed for stable environments. But humans evolved in an unpredictable world. Their strategies are optimized for handling uncertainty and change." "And you believe these strategies are superior to our own?" another board member asked. "Not superior," Velinara corrected. "Different, suited to different environments and challenges. But humans face the same kinds of challenges that all advanced civilizations eventually encounter: resource scarcity, environmental changes, technological disruptions, social conflicts. And their adaptive strategies allow them to thrive under these conditions," Grok added. "While our rigid systems might struggle." The board members conferred among themselves for several minutes. Finally, the chairperson announced their decision. "Based on these findings, we are not only continuing the exchange program, but expanding it. We want to establish permanent research partnerships with human institutions. We need to learn more about these adaptive strategies." The aliens looked at each other with satisfaction. They had succeeded in changing their people's understanding of human behavior. "There is one more thing," Pip said. "The humans have a saying: the best way to learn about something is to jump in and try it. Maybe we should not just study human strategies. Maybe we should experiment with implementing some of them in our own societies." This was the most radical suggestion of all. The aliens were not just recommending that they study humans. They were suggesting that they learn from them. Revolutionary. "Indeed," the chairperson murmured. "We will consider your recommendations carefully." As the aliens left the council chamber, They felt proud of what they had accomplished. They had bridged the gap between two very different ways of thinking about society and problem-solving. But more importantly, they had learned that there was always more to learn. The universe was full of different approaches to the trawl,